Masters of the Universe Origins. Taking the idea of the original 1982 Masters of the Universe toy line and updating it with modern articulation, the ability to interconnect parts to make your own figures, and giving us a pretty awesome selection of characters, vehicles, and playsets. The Origins toy line has become a fan favorite. If you are a fan of that vintage 5.5 buffed out aesthetic, then you have got some really cool toys from Mattel right now. We are in the 4th year of the Masters of the Universe Origins line, and to be perfectly honest, this line has gone so much further than I ever expected it to when it was first announced. Not only have we been given several characters from the original 80s Masters of the Universe toy line, but we've also expanded into areas that contain unreleased characters, Princess of Power, New Adventures, 2000X. We've also been given tons of playsets, including a new version of Eternia, something that I thought was unthinkable. So, needless to say, it's been a really great toy line. But as we're in the 4th year, and as things seem to be shifting into the cartoon collection, what's left for vintage Masters of the Universe Origins? That is what I want to talk about today. Before we dive into the discussion, I want to take a moment to tell you guys about Whatnot and their upcoming virtual comic convention, Whatnot Con. Now, if you've never heard of Whatnot before, it is a live streaming auction app. So think of your favorite live streaming service such as YouTube here or Twitch and combine that with the auction format of eBay. Boom! You've got Whatnot. And Whatnot Con is an event that they're holding on that app from April 11th through April 15th. Come join Whatnot Con for over 1,200 different exhibitors, which includes sellers and artists and celebrities and even studios like Marvel. I'm also pleased to announce that I will be joining Whatnot Con with my first ever Whatnot stream. You can get on there, you can bookmark my stream, and you can join me because I'm going to be selling some Pixel Dance swag and also auctioning off some toys from my personal collection, such as vintage Masters of the Universe action figures. This is also a great opportunity to pick up some of the stuff that you can typically only buy from me in person when I'm at conventions, such as my Major Bendy's action figure. Yeah, I'll even sign it for you. My Whatnot stream is happening on April 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you use the link in my video description to sign up for Whatnot and you're a brand new user, you'll even be gifted $10 that you can use in my stream or at any of the streams happening during Whatnot Con. So make sure you get over there, bookmark my stream so that you know when it's coming, and join me so you can pick up some of that sweet swag directly from me. I hope to see some of you guys there. Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and yes, today we are going to talk about what is left for Masters of the Universe Origins, and specifically, I want to talk about what's left from the vintage Masters of the Universe toy line. Now, I know that this leaves out lots of other stuff, and trust me, I want to talk about all of it. I probably will talk about all of it. But there's been a lot of topic of discussion on whether or not Mattel is going to finish out the vintage Masters of the Universe toy line here in Origins. And it does feel like we're getting close. But as I took the time to sit down and look at all of it, I realized we've got a lot left to cover the vintage Masters of the Universe toy line. I actually reached out to all of my supporters over on Patreon with my list, and I asked them to check it over for me and suggest other things that they think I should be talking about on here. So massive shout out to all of my supporters over there on Patreon because they helped me compile today's list. Now, a few rules before we move on. I specifically want to keep my focus on vintage Masters of the Universe. Any characters that appeared only in the Filmation animated series, I am not going to include on this list because I think it's highly possible we're going to see them in the new Cartoon Collection segment of Masters of the Universe Origins. I'm also going to kind of try to keep this a little less wish listy in terms of I want to see this unreleased character, I want to see this concept character, I want to see this mini comics character, because there's tons of that out there. Now, I do have a few exceptions with good reason, and I will get to those in due time. So without further ado, let's start with the figures that were released in the original vintage Masters of the Universe toy line that have yet to show up in Masters of the Universe Origins. Kicking things off, we're going to start with a heavy hitter, Too Bad. I honestly cannot believe that Too Bad has not yet shown up in Masters of the Universe Origins. He's always been a fan favorite character, and for good reason. This guy is awesome looking. Now, here's the thing. We just recently got a reveal from the Turtles of Grayskull line showing us a Too Bad style character in to Bopsteady, the merging of Bebop and Rocksteady. And if we're getting that with Turtles and Grayskull, I think it's safe to say that Too Bad is coming up soon for Origins. But he hasn't been released yet, so he's on the list. Stondar is the next one. And I'm bringing this one up so soon because we just got Rock-On released through Mattel Creations. And with them going through the trouble of creating tooling for a transforming rock guy, I would think that Stondar has to be coming up pretty soon. Now, on the discussion of the Comet Warriors, this does bring up the question, will we also get Granada? Granada was never released in the vintage toy line. She did, however, appear in the She-Ra Princess of Power cartoon. So, this is one of those weird cases where we should say, well, if Granada is made, will she be part of Cartoon Collection? Because she also kind of fits in with the rocks here. She did appear in the mini comic, so I just wanted to mention her. So here's an interesting bunch that I'm very curious how they would handle in Masters of the Universe Origins. Rotar and Twistoid. These weird spinny top dudes were released at the tail end of the vintage Masters of the Universe line, and they're actually some of the more expensive figures on the aftermarket today. These guys did get released in the Masters of the Universe Classics line, and they had this weird concept where they gave them interchangeable legs so they could be regular sized people, but personally to me, I always thought that looked weird because their upper bodies looked weird on standard legs, in my opinion. So I'm curious how these would be handled in Origins. I think it's better if they're just the top dudes alone, but I don't know. It is a line filled with interchangeable parts by design, so maybe including the legs would be cool as well. I don't know. Maybe these are going to be exclusive because of how different and unique they are. I'm curious to see when they actually happen. Blast Attack is always an interesting one because the idea behind this character is that he's a ticking time bomb. He blows himself up. And I remember back in the Classics era, a lot of people wondered if Mattel would even do a character like that today. But he also just showed up in the Revolution series on Netflix. So Mattel's definitely still using him for animation like that. So I think he definitely still needs to come in the Origins line. Definitely some discussion on if that action feature will be included. And if it comes with the splitting apart feature, can they still do interchangeable parts? Definitely have some questions there. Now here's an interesting bunch of characters who were released in that vintage line who definitely need to be released here, but it brings up lots of other questions. I'm talking about Sarad, Blade, and Gwildor from the 87 motion picture. All three of these guys got figures in the original toy line. And they kind of had their own designs. They weren't quite matching up with what we saw on screen, but they were close enough. And I don't feel like a line would be complete without doing those three because they did appear in the vintage toy line. I would love to see these guys in Origins to get updated vintage styles for them. But this brings up the question and the debate. Can we get some of the other movie characters in vintage stylings? How cool would it be to get He-Man and Skeletor, just as quick examples, in that vintage aesthetic in Origins? Heck, I don't even think we need actor likenesses for this. I might be totally fine with the standard He-Man head here from the vintage line used, but with his movie costume. a Skeletor, a Golden God Skeletor, Evil Lyn, Beastman, Karg. All of these would be very cool in Origins. I have no idea if it's possible. I have no idea if it's coming. But man, we got to have at least Blade, Gwildor, and Sarad, right? It completes the vintage line. There's a lot of Horde guys we still need, and I kind of blame the fact that Origins went so hard on the Snake Men that the Horde kind of got left behind. Which is fine. We got tons of Snake Men, and that's something we had never really had before. So that was cool and different. But there's a lot of Horde members that still need some love. I was shocked. I couldn't believe this. I actually had to double check it. But we're missing a variant in the form of Hurricane Hordak. He has not yet been released in Origins. He would definitely need to come with his chromed out armor, a la Flying Fist He-Man and Terraclaw Skeletor. So I hope that this is something that is on their list somewhere. But we've got a lot of bigger Horde guys that we definitely need to see released, including Modulok and Multibot. And come on, in a line where the whole design is popping apart the limbs and reconnecting them with each other, how have we not gotten Modulok and Multibot yet? These guys are going to be amazing in this line with the already interchangeable feature intact. These have got to happen. We need Modulok and Multibot. Here is a forgotten Horde member, Dragstore. Poor Dragstore seems to be forgotten a lot. This is the guy who's got a big old wheel in his torso, and the original one came with a ripcord so that you can actually make him roll across the floor, kind of like the Road Ripper. I would love to see this guy in Origins. I would also love to see that action feature intact. In Origins, they completely omitted it and just sculpted a wheel on his armor, and it didn't turn, and in my opinion, it took away from the figure. I'm a big believer that with some of these characters, the action features are what made the original figures cool, and taking away the action features sort of hurts the figure. If we can find a way to get the aesthetic, but also retain that feature and still have good articulation, that's the sweet spot, and I think it could be done with Dragstore. And here's a big hero that I can't believe we don't have yet. He's got to be coming. Rio Blast. Come on, no Rio, we riot. We need Rio Blast. We need the Eternian cowboy with his lasers that pop out of his arms and his legs and his torso with his big laser backpack. Come on. He's like the Brave Star of the Motu world. Hey, put Brave Star in the line. That'd be cool. But come on, we at least need Rio Blast. He's got to be coming. Now, here's a debatable one. Here's one that I'm very curious to see what you guys think. I think there would be a lot of argument. I think arguments can be made both ways with this. But in my opinion, we need them. I'm talking about the Meteorbs. I know these guys feel different, right? They're transforming eggs from Bandai. Mattel actually licensed this from Bandai to include them in the vintage Masters of the Universe toy line. But you know what? They're canon characters. You know, they appear in comics and stuff. We need these guys. I think it would be awesome to maybe get some sort of multi-pack with just all of the Meteorbs. I wonder if Mattel could even do it. Does Bandai hold some sort of like license or trademark over the transforming egg that would keep Mattel from doing him? Can they do it because they did it in the vintage line? Licensing is weird. I have no idea, but I know there's tons of bootleggy toys out there for transforming eggs. So come on, Mattel. Let's make some transforming eggs. Here's where things get really fun. Laser Power He-Man and Laser Light Skeletor. They're the last two vintage variants that we do not have yet in Origins. And obviously, these are highly requested because the original ones were only released in Italy and some other places outside of the US, making the vintage figures very expensive and hard to track down today. These guys would be awesome additions to the Origins line, allowing a lot of fans to finally get these in a vintage style and aesthetic, so we absolutely need these two in the line. And along that line of thinking, we need the Giants, Titus and Megator. Again, these were only released in Italy and some other places outside of the US because they came at the tail end when the line was canceled here. Those are some Grail-like pieces for the vintage toy line, and it would be amazing to get them here in Origins. Now, if they do these in Origins, I would love for them to be done proper. I want huge figures. When they did these two characters in Classics, they shrunk them down to 12 inches tall, and to me, they seem way too small. I want the big 18-inch buffed out hulking giants. And if there's a way to add some articulation to these guys, that would be amazing. I don't know how expensive something like this would be. I don't know if this would have to be like a Mattel Creations crowdfund type thing, but I want the giants. I don't want the only representation of the giants in Origins to be Krang from the Turtles of Grayskull line and Andre the Giant from the Masters of the WWE Universe line. I want them proper. Give me real big Megator and Titus figures. And since we're talking about Megator and Titus, that brings us into the realm of Powers of Grayskull. So everything that I just mentioned there is it for action figures that were in the vintage toy line that did not yet come to Origins. But now we're starting to get into some more what-if territory, because I think there's some arguments that could be made in favor for a lot of these other characters. For example, continuing with Powers of Grayskull, Hero and Eldor are big ones. Both of these figures were sculpted and ready to be released in the vintage line as the line transitioned into the Powers of Grayskull toy line, but it never happened. We did eventually get these two in Masters of the Universe Classics, and Super 7 did vintage style ones, which are very cool, but we need them in Origins. We need them in Origins with the updated articulation. Hero needs to be vac metal. It's very important that he's shiny. But these guys need to be there. And how about some of the other Powers of Grayskull characters? Shirella would be awesome to see. Those dinosaurs, come on. We need the 3 dinosaurs. They would be awesome as well. I have no idea if Mattel would want to go into doing the dinosaurs, but they're good at making dinosaur toys. If you look at their Jurassic World line, I'd love to see me a Turbodactyl, a Biontops, a Tyrannosaurus. Let's do this, Mattel. Come on. Give us Powers of Grayskull. Before we get into a few more what-ifs, I do think it's important to talk about the fact that there are also tons of vehicles in the vintage Masters of the Universe toy line, and I don't think it's possible that we will see all of them. There's no way. There's no way. At the rate that we've gotten vehicles in this line so far, while we've gotten several and they're very cool, there's no way they're going to do everything. But there's a few notable things I want to bring up here, including a playset that we haven't gotten yet in the form of the Fright Zone. Now, the Fright Zone lost the fan vote. They put up a fan vote and they asked what playset fans wanted next, and a snake layer one, which is cool because we're getting something new and different, and I totally support that. But a lot of fans do still want an updated version of the Fright Zone, as well as the Slime Pit. And I am a huge fan of the Slime Pit. I would love to see these even if they're together. Putting these together as one playset makes sense to me, so I would love to see an updated Fright Zone and Slime Pit if it's possible. But let's talk about some of the other things we haven't gotten yet. A Battle Ram. We got the Sky Sled way back at the beginning of the line, but we don't have the back half. We don't have the Battle Ram. I want the Battle Ram. It was my favorite heroic vehicle in the vintage toy line, and it feels so iconic for Masters of the Universe. It feels like we should be getting a Battle Ram at some point. There's some other fun things too, like Mantisaur, who's kind of like more of a creature than a vehicle, but it's like a steed for Hordak. That would be awesome to see. And what about Battle Bones? Battle Bones is like, he was an action figure carry case, right? A glorified action figure carry case, but he's also kind of a creature. And he would be a lot of fun to see in Origins. So many other vehicles. I know one of the ones people bring up a lot is Attack Track, but they kind of bring up the Filmation style Attack Track. I want to leave that off of this particular list because I think it's possible to see something like that in Cartoon Collection now that we know that the collector is coming. I feel like Attack Track is totally possible there. In the realm of unreleased figures, there are some other ones that I think would make total sense to see finally brought to life in Masters of the Universe Origins. We already talked about Hero and Eldor, but I think another 2 that we absolutely need are Plasmar and Strobo. These were part of the unreleased 88 wave of figures. And the reason I think it's important to get these two in here is because we've already got all the other characters either in the line or coming soon. We already have Slamurai in the line. We know that Terror is coming. We know that Lord Grasp is coming. So we need Strobo and we need Plasmar so that we can have that full 1988 unreleased wave from the vintage toy line. Or how about this one? The Fearless Photog. If you're not familiar with the story here, the Fearless Photog won a Create a Character contest back in the 80s. The winner was supposed to get their character made into a figure in the original Masters of the Universe toy line, and it never happened. At least, not until the Masters of the Universe Classics line, where Mattel finally made good on their promise and gave us a Fearless Photog figure. But wouldn't it be cool to get this guy in the Origins line? That way, he fits in with our vintage Masters of the Universe figures. And if we're kind of talking about like before the line even launched, I think another argument could be made for Gygor. Gygor, famously was going to be reused from the Big Jim Gorilla, and he was going to be introduced at the very beginning of the Masters of the Universe toy line, but he didn't make it. Now, there are several different concept arts out there showing him in different ways and different forms, but we did get a version of him in Masters of the Universe Classics with the big yellow armored gorilla. I would love to see this guy finally done in a vintage style and aesthetic. And there's others too. We could talk about things like the Evil Horde robots, which was like a squirt toy. Maybe he could be done proper. There's so many concept figures, and I don't want to get into all of them, but I know that that came up a lot in the lists on my Patreon, where I was asking about. A lot of people were bringing up concept stuff. A lot of people were bringing up mini comic versions of characters. So I do just want to point out that there's so many of those that could be done as well as other 2000X characters. We got a few of them. Why not getting the 2000X version of King Grayskull? Or the 2000X version of Zodak, which is a different Zodak than the original Zodak. I would love to see that as well. And here's the big one. And I know some of you out there are waiting for me to say this. Where's Bo? Where's Cowl? Where's Glimmer? Where's all of these amazing characters from She-Ra, Princess of Power? There's so many more that we could do, and we've only been teased with She-Ra here. We need more from that, and I am kind of surprised we haven't gotten more of an answer about the She-Ra characters in this style, considering we have hit her anniversary this year. I'm hoping that Mattel's got something on the way for Princess of Power, because there's so many great characters that I would love to see done in the Origins style. I know that there's a lot of She-Ra fans out there, and so I definitely want these figures as well. I know I want everybody to have the toys that they want, okay? And I know that on this list, I'm leaving off a lot of names that a lot of you probably want to see. Like I said, just on my Patreon alone, where I asked for everybody to kind of check my work on what hasn't been released yet, a lot of the things people were putting were like mini comic versions of characters and characters we've never seen before. And that's why I think like you could do a whole separate video just talking about all the things we would love to see in Origins. But just talking about things that came out in the original toy lines, that's what we've got here. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And for some reason, it felt like a lot less until I made this list and put it all together. Back at San Diego Comic-Con last year, I asked about getting the rest of the vintage figures, and they said that they are absolutely committed to finishing the vintage line. But they also noted that the more vintage style characters were going to become exclusive to Mattel Creations. And we have seen that a lot this year with the releases of Cyclone just recently and Rock-On, etc., etc. My concern here is that with all of the characters that I put on the list, if I'm just talking about the vintage toy line figures that haven't been released yet, at the rate they've been releasing these on Mattel Creations, it's going to take us another 4 years to finish off the vintage toy line. So I'm very curious how they're planning to do this. I hope they have a plan for all of this. I assume we're going to be getting lots of reveals coming up very soon with San Diego Comic-Con quickly approaching. And of course, I will be asking lots of questions about this when I see them in person at the event. So here's time to sound off, guys. Hit that comment section down below. Let me know if I forgot anything or if there's something that you think should be included. I have a feeling you guys are going to list all kinds of characters that I didn't get to, but that's good. Put them out there. Put it out there because people are definitely looking at this stuff. They're definitely reading these comments. I think it's good to let Mattel know exactly what we're hoping for in these toy lines that we enjoy so much. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy hunting, my friends. And until next time.